We begin in France, where President Emmanuel Macron says nothing is off the table when it comes to stopping Vladimir Putin. At a conference with Ukraine's allies from around Europe, Macron even spoke about the possibility of deploying ground troops to make sure Russia does not win the war. The French leader also pledged increased military support, including medium and long-range missiles.
A show of unity from over 20 European leaders. Host Emmanuel Macron said it was time to step up support for Ukraine, for its own sake and for the good of all its allies on the continent.
We are convinced that Russia's defeat is essential for security and stability in Europe. What's at stake right now is, on the one hand, the war in Ukraine, meaning Ukraine's ability to endure any new Russian offensive or threats in the coming months, but also the ability of Europeans to define their own collective security.
Macron even said sending in ground forces wasn't out of the question, a point that other leaders called the most heated discussion of the day.
There is no consensus right now about sending in ground troops in an official, endorsed and sanctioned manner. But in reality, nothing should be ruled out. We will do whatever it takes to ensure that Russia cannot win this war.
The French president said the most immediate priority was giving Ukraine more medium and long-range missiles. France and Britain are already supplying the weapons, but Germany says it will not be sending its Taurus missiles, shown here. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told press before the conference that they pose too much of a risk of dragging his country directly into war with Russia.
German soldiers cannot at any point or any place be linked to targets that this system reaches. This clarity is absolutely necessary. I'm amazed that it doesn't emotionally move some, that they don't even consider that what we do now could to some extent lead to our participation in this war.
Whatever pledges were made at the Paris meeting, Ukraine says commitment does not constitute delivery. Ukraine's defense minister said recently that half of the Western military aid pledged to Kyiv is delivered later than promised.
And let's get more on this story now. We are joined by DW political correspondent Matthew Moore. And Matthew, you know, you're in Berlin, so I'd like to ask you a little bit about the German position and reaction to these statements by President Emmanuel Macron that Europe should not rule out sending ground forces to Ukraine. What are the Germans likely to make of that?
Well, Sarah, Germany is terrified of doing anything that could look like being directly involved in this war. So it's safe to say at this stage that Germany is firmly against the idea of sending troops. And those comments by Emmanuel Macron will have got alarm bells ringing here, frankly. While Macron may have conceded that there is no consensus and that nothing should be ruled out, for Germans listening to this, it's really a dramatic escalation. Germany has been bent over backwards for the past 2 years not to be seen to be directly involved in this war for fear of triggering a wider conflict. And I think that what will also have really gone down badly in Berlin are other comments made by President Macron where he's alleged to have kind of poked Germany, and he said many people have said never, never to tanks. They said never, never to fighter jets. And the implication being that Europe and NATO should be ready to do whatever it takes.
Ukraine, for its part, says, of course, it desperately needs Western support to cut down the losses it is incurring on the battlefields. And, just bring us up to date on the most recent debate in Germany itself. Why is the country so reluctant to send Ukraine the much-needed Taurus missiles?
Well, here in Germany, we've known for many months that Chancellor Olaf Scholz was against sending Taurus, but we heard for the first time in his own words why that is. And he said that unlike the French and British cruise missiles, the missiles could not be programmed remotely, and it would require German soldiers operating in Ukraine, and he was not willing to raise the stakes and potentially have German forces directly party to this war. Now, his critics say Germany could arguably train Ukrainians on how to use the system and then hand them over. But really the bottom line is this: he doesn't trust Ukraine not to use those weapons to hit targets inside Russian territory and risk Germany becoming a party or being blamed for any casualties.
How is the Chancellor's refusal to send the missiles being received in Germany itself? What does the public think?
Actually, the public is broadly in line with Scholz on this. It's kind of 50-50 in recent polls. Many really are deeply wary about doing anything that could escalate this conflict. It could turn Germany into a direct target for Russia. At the same time, political pressure is building. The German coalition government is divided. There are lawmakers from the Greens and the Free Democrats, with whom Scholz's Social Democrats are in power, and they've come out in favour of sending Taurus, and that, they've said, his rationale for not doing so is bizarre. And I think the lesson, though, of the last 2 years, Sarah, is that Scholz will not really be pressured into a decision by lawmakers, but will probably ultimately make the call if and when the United States goes first.
Matthew Moore in Berlin, thank you.